Ledrash! And welcome to Shift+F1, a podcast about speedy race cars. That, by the way, is apparently Belgian French for the rain.
Ah, very good.
Because apparently rain in French is something different.
Doigt? No, that's
so
left
it
or
was.
something. Yeah. Il pleut, I think. I don't know. I thought you said le trash. I thought we were talking about Paul Ricard for a second.
Ledrash. D-R-A-C-H-E. I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. But so it was in Spa this weekend. Some different kind of rain. I am Drew Scanlon. Joining me, Danny O'Dwyer. How are you, Danny?
Good. We have like a million words for rain in Ireland. We're like the Eskimos and ice. So there's no shortage. Ledrash, I wonder if it means like bucketing down, or it's spitting, or it's lashing, or it's cats and dogs, or it's pishing. It's hard to tell. There's so many beautiful ways to explain rain, which is just as well because we had lots of different brands of rain this week in the Spa-Francorchamps.
Speaking of hashtag brands, also joining us, Rob Zachney. How are you, Rob?
Doing pretty well. I feel like I read somewhere that the Eskimo language to describe ice thing was unfortunately a myth.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's wrong. But the Irish one is true for sure.
Well, that's because you have so many slightly profane ways to describe a weather condition.
If you're new to this podcast, a very warm welcome to you. And if you are new to Formula One itself, we recommend listening to our preseason primer episode, which assumes no prior F1 knowledge and explains how the sport works and who everybody is. So if you'd like to go back and listen to that, it's episode 216. Also, this show is supported entirely by our audience over at patreon.com/shiftf1, where every month we release bonus podcasts and videos exclusively for our patrons that cover racing documentaries and films, F1 video games, experiments with other racing series, and a lot of weird things. So if you would like to support the show and get access to all that fun stuff, head over to patreon.com/shiftf1 or click the link in the show notes. What do we have going on this month, Danny?
We had Need for Speed at the end of last month, and we are continuing that trend with a review of Gran Turismo later this month. Are we going to have to go to the cinema for this?
I've been thinking about that. Rob, have you ever reviewed a movie that you saw in the cinema? Because I don't know what to do. I don't want to bring out my phone and illuminate everyone around me, but I'm going to have to take notes. Do I bring a memo pad and put it on my...
You just write, write freehand in the dark.
Oh, man, that's dangerous.
Okay,
it's gonna.
I do have a clipboard that velcros to my thigh that I have for flying.
Oh yeah.
That I could probably use.
Maybe like a pocket blackboard and chalk. So really just. Really annoying.
Or what about
everyone around
like a voice recorder?
Oh yeah, that's good.
To record, yeah,
like everyone dictaphone. That. Is that what they were called? Is that
Sure.
Is that the word?
Stenographer.
Yes. There we go. Now we have it. Bring a typewriter. Absolutely perfect. Yeah, I don't know, but we're gonna do it because we're real racing journalists over here at Shift+F1. And a massive thanks, of course, to all of our incredible title sponsors: Agave ATX, Cypress Training, Turf SCS, Alex Medina, Kikaha of the Art, at Team at Team Blackjack, not Jack Black, as I was about to say, although it'd be cool if Team Jack Black was here. Yeah, Michael Maves, Gordy's Army, at Talking Autos, Olivia Evans, TelemetryDeck.com, FTC, Drew Stewart, Bailey Foote, Abdullah Althani, Jason Chadwick, Abraham Getchell, This Space Above Us podcast, Bunny Fiend, Snigs, Alex Goucher, Max Voltar, Circuit Demon, Troy Stammer, Humberto Roca, William Rumpf, Irvine Clinical Research, Lachlan the Maddened Man, and of course our good friend Jason Kelly. Thank you all so much. I'm also just about finished my edit of the beautiful time we had at Sonoma Raceway. I see Drew is wearing his Sonoma Raceway shirt, so the perfect time to remind me to just put the finishing touches to that. So our beautiful Media Pass patrons will be getting that as well this month.
Looking forward to it. Also looking forward to recapping every event that happened this weekend. I feel like we haven't done a sprint weekend in a while. And there was so much happened. Everything happened so much.
Yes, all the time.
I'm going to start with the sprint grid. I don't even remember how we do this. Do we do the sprint? I'm going to do the sprint first and then cover qualifying, even though qualifying for the race happened before the sprint qualifying and the sprint grid. I'm just executive decision. Sprint grid. Both the sprint qualifying and the regular qualifying started wets. Everybody on the sprint grid started on intermediate tires, and then it's that weird, when do we go to slick tires? Stroll tried it in SQ2. Didn't work out so well. He sort of just was looking like he might do it, but he drifted off the track into a wall, bringing out the red flag and ending the session. But it was a pretty interesting session. Oscar Piastri looked like he had pole for the first event in his Formula One career. But of course, the party was ruined by Max Verstappen taking sprint pole, I guess, by 11 thousandths of a second over Oscar Piastri. In third was Carlos Sainz. Charles Leclerc fourth. Lando Norris was fifth, followed by Pierre Gasly, Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez, Esteban Ocon, George Russell in 10th. Then we've got Daniel Ricciardo, Alex Albon, Logan Sargent, Lance Stroll, and Fernando Alonso in 15th. And then Yuki Tsunoda, Valtteri Bottas, Kevin Magnussen, Zhou Guanyu, and Nico Hulkenberg at the back of the grid, who missed out on his final run by about a second, the time ticking down before he could get over the line. Sorry, Nico. 3 or 4 of the first laps of the sprint were taken up by running behind the safety car due to the wetness. But we eventually got to a rolling start, Danny.
We did, yes. A rolling start. And I guess due to the makeup of these wet tires, or I guess maybe due to the makeup of the intermediates and their ability to get the job done. And also, I guess, the fact that they weren't really racing on proper wet, anymore. If it was, it's safety car time, kind of seems like it is at the moment. It made a pretty easy decision for everyone to come in and get the inters on. They had to start on the wets because of the conditions of the track and the safety car and all that sort of stuff. So really it was a question of who's going to come in. Much like, I believe, was it Hungary 2 years ago with lights out and away we go, Lewis Hamilton only, when he was...
I think that was was that Monza?
I don't think it was Monza. The pit was on the other... Oh, no, the pit was on the same side. No, it wasn't Monza. It was... I'm pretty sure it was... I think it was Hungary. I'm pretty sure it was Hungary. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it wasn't Monza, though. But anyway, I could be wrong. In any case, we were wondering who was going to come in this time. It wasn't going to be a grid start like was going to be that time, where there was basically no reason not to come in at all because we're all going to have to stop in the pits anyway. This one was a rolling start, which does pose the question, depending on where you are in the order, do you come in or not? Generally, you would think you're going to lose so much in a lap driving on wets that when they get out on the inters and you have to come around on your second lap maybe and get the inters on, that you'll have lost so much time that it won't have been worth it. But there is always the issue of congestion in the pit lane, and where you are in the pit box and who's coming in is always a big part of that. Max Verstappen is the biggest question mark of everyone because he goes in first because the championship winning team is the first box on the grids, and it then descends from there. And the issue there is that he has a pit stop, and then there's like 8 cars come in behind him. They can't let him out until those cars have passed, or worry about getting a penalty for an unsafe release or something like that. Given the fact that he's in an incredibly powerful, strong car, which is likely to make up any time that is lost. Whatever they do, they opt for the more conservative approach, and Verstappen goes out. He is the only lead driver of all of the grid to not come in. So otherwise, the front running drivers on the grid for all the other teams come in. Perez also comes in, obviously, because Verstappen hasn't. And the winners and losers out of this, the winner is Oscar Piastri, who manages to get in and get out before any of the folks who pitted behind him managed to sneak out. I think he might have been the front box, the furthest along box. So McLaren's position in the standings last year actually kind of benefited them because they were pretty far down. The folks who didn't enjoy much luck out of this were, I think it was Carlos Sainz for Ferrari, who came in and got stuck, and they were quite reticent to put him out in front of everyone. Perez also didn't have a great job of it, but they launched Perez out earlier, and he actually managed to jump Sainz in the pit as well. So Sainz just had a bit of a nightmare pit. And then around they went, and then the opposite end of the field, Max Verstappen who at this stage has actually quite a long gap to the cars behind him, because the next car up was whatever position 10 or 11. He comes in and gets his pit done, but obviously Oscar Piastri has gotten track position ahead of him, and then the rest of them come in and get changed onto inters immediately. So the wets were pretty much gone right away.
Yeah, it's effectively an undercut by Piastri, because he was, having come out with those faster intermediate tires, though he was behind on track, was still lapping quicker, so that when Verstappen came in, Piastri had eaten up enough time to come out ahead. But lap 3, pigs are flying because Fernando Alonso has made a mistake, everyone. He drops the car on the curb, spins off into the gravel, and brings out the safety car. Very unusual for him.
Yeah, one of those ones
like a very human mistake, it looked like.
Yeah, exactly. It seemed like the type of mistake we would be complaining about a rookie doing, and it being, kind of what we had last week. Like, just or Perez when he put his wheels up on the grass last week. Actually, that's probably the one that reminds me of the most. It was just off the line, and yeah, unfortunately, just one of those ones you don't get back once you spin in the rain going downhill at Spa on an off camber turn. That's pretty much murder she wrote.
Yeah. Same goes for the restart on lap 6. Piastri doing his best, but Verstappen just clobbers him on the Kemmel straight, even without DRS, and gets by to take the lead of the sprint. Later in the lap, Hamilton goes for the attack on Sergio Perez, nosing up the inside at Stabilo, and just crunches into Perez's side pod. And while Perez does keep the place, the damage really does a number on his performance, and Hamilton is able to get by him as they go through turn 1. And then Sainz just behind pounces and gets Perez as they head into Eau Rouge, followed by Leclerc at the end of the Kemmel Straight. This does earn Hamilton a 5-second penalty. You guys have any perspective on this incident?
Yeah, I mean, it's racing incident. I don't know. It's saying it's racing incident says that there shouldn't be a penalty for it. He did just bash into the it was just an unfortunate error, I guess, on Hamilton. I don't think he was being particularly risky or dangerous, but obviously the grip that he needed wasn't really there where he put the car. And yeah, I think it's a fair penalty for, he definitely damaged Checo and sort of made his race untenable at that stage.
Eventually
like the call,
Perez's
though.
damage. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
No, I mean, I just didn't like the call. Like for me, it was. I feel like, is it a racing incident should probably trump the impact a little bit. Like, to me, it looked like a fair move to attempt. I didn't like maybe there was telemetry. They saw that made them less happy with how the incident went down. But for me, looking at it, it's like I'm not sure that is necessarily a move I would have issued a penalty for. I suppose it is a different. I suppose that the difference is that he didn't carry it off. He ends up basically only being able to overtake Perez because Perez's car is horribly compromised at that point, and so to do nothing is to basically concede a massive advantage. To Hamilton, so I guess from the standpoint of in terms of what was at stake and then the consequences for both drivers, you could either let Sergio get completely screwed or you could wrap Hamilton's knuckles.
That's a fair point. Whether or not this is something that by the letter of the law there should be a penalty for, or is this just justice? And are those two things the same thing? And they shouldn't necessarily be the same thing, but I guess nobody's going to complain that Hamilton got a penalty given the fact that Perez got overtaken by both Ferraris on the Kemmel Straight.
And nobody wants just to move into an era where hey, sorry, collisions don't count if it's sufficiently full send enough. I can see where you don't want to set that precedent.
Yeah, fair.
Well, eventually Perez's damage propagates such that he can't even keep it on the track, takes a dip into the gravel, and while he does come back on to the track, he retires before the end of the race.
Did it seem almost weird how quickly things came apart? His car seemed normal for a minute until the Kemmel Straight, right? Yeah. It's for a minute there, it seems like they just had a light contact, but they're going pretty wheel to wheel down in La Source. and then like by the time they're at the end of the Kemmel Straight, it looks like Sergio is now driving like a Formula 3 car.
Yeah, and then when he tried to take that turn, the one that he ended up on the ground, it just didn't turn at all. Like it looked like it was completely banjaxed. I wonder if, because it hit the side, but that doesn't necessarily read to me like how much aero are you gonna like? Was it the floor?
Well, there's also the floor.
Yeah.
I mean,
So like one of those.
It was a big chunk.
Yeah, like, and the floor is so critical now with the ground effect car, right? So I suppose if the floor had a big missing chunk, particularly if it like breaches
on
the
one side.
Yeah, what creates sort of the seal. I could sort of see that accounting for what happened. I do know that by the time he pulled into the pits, it did look like those pictures of like World War II bombers landing at an airfield after a raid, where it's like, oh, that's a lot of missing frame.
Yeah.
Lap 10 of 11, Ricciardo goes a bit wide in the final chicane, allowing Russell the opportunity to get past before turn 1 into the last of the points-paying positions.
Ugh.
I know. It's almost there, Danny Rick. But that is how things ended up. The end of the sprint looks like this. Max Verstappen comes home with 8 points for his first place, followed by Oscar Piastri.
Nice.
Then Pierre Gasly, rounding out the sprint podium. Behind them, Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton actually finished 4th, but with his 5-second penalty dropped to 7th. Then George Russell in that final 8th spot with 1 championship point. Ahead of Esteban Ocon, Daniel Ricciardo, Lance Stroll in 11th, Alex Albon, Valtteri Bottas, Kevin Magnussen, Zhou Guanyu in 15th, Logan Sargent, Nico Hulkenberg, and Yuki Tsunoda ahead of the DNFs of Sergio Perez and Fernando Alonso.
Just one last thing on the events Saturday. What is that? This was kind of one of the scenarios that we've been a bit concerned about, just like how wet were things going to be? How are they going to handle race start procedures in these conditions? We already talked about the fact that, like wet tires appear to only be useful for running behind the safety car, but it is worth noting that after the race, Gasly was talking about, for him starting in the middle of the pack, it felt really unsafe. Even after a few laps running behind the safety car, the visibility was so bad that he couldn't see more than 20 meters in front of the car, which is not really the visibility you need to react to hazards in front of you. And as he put it, as we've seen, like, your concern heading up over Raidillon is that anything could be happening in front of you, and you just wouldn't be able to react. And at the end of it, after somebody mentioned this quote to Max, and he also said it feels like to him visibility in wet conditions is so much worse than it was a few years ago. And even behind the safety car, he felt like visibility was really, really poor. And, as he points out, the safety car doesn't do to rain what an F1 car does. So, he also sort of ended up at a place where, if we want to have decent visibility, as he put it, if we want to get rid of the spray issue, we can't do a race at the moment in the wet if we want good visibility, which does point at like the scale of the problem we are facing. Now, this seems worse at Spa because it's such a rainy track, but man, it does feel like this is a major problem. Just that F1 is going to be contending with just like more intense rainfall patterns when they crop up, and the fact that it just doesn't seem to take very much to render conditions really, really scary for drivers, because like everyone I think was okay. F1 drivers can handle tricky conditions and like low grip conditions. The lack of awareness, right? The thing that keeps drivers safest is ability to control and react. Yeah. And if you take that away, if you effectively blind them in the fog of the spray, there's not the car's primary safety system can't engage,
which is the driver itself, right? Like their ability to like it's very reminiscent of like when we look at the crashes that have happened in be it at Spa with Antoine Hubert or that poor younger kid, was it Delano Van Toff, just recently, or even if you think about Marco Simoncelli, like a lot of these incidents are the results of the rider or driver being like, they're all being collected by another car. Like that's the accident that's occurring there. It's not the survival cell not being able to hit a wall. Like for
these things are built to survive just about
good.
any incident,
Exactly.
but not the second incident.
Yeah, exactly. Once the frame has been like compromised, and also generally when they're getting hit, they're getting the ones in which at least there are those like horrible instances of people getting killed is when they're getting like broadsided or something, you know. And like you said, nobody can see in front of themselves. So you know what is there to do? They're not even lifting, you know, and you can tell how much of a difference that is. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it's a very interesting and difficult situation for them. But you could see the difference in this time when they, like, even the fact that they didn't do standing starts this time. We didn't have that whole issue like we had before, right, where we're just standing start, crash, standing start, crash, which was great television, I'm not going to lie, but I think given what's happened at Spa only just recently, and also, of course, in recent years, it wasn't really, you know, people's flavor at the moment. It's just like, yeah, let's just keep it a bit conservative for the moment, maybe.
But it does feel like they also just lucked out that the rain eased. You know, if it had just remained a little steadier, I feel like we might be talking about like another disastrous weekend in Spa. So this issue does feel like both a safety crisis for motorsport, and then also just a crisis for, you know, if handling the safety issue means we can't run the race, then, you know, we have a major problem for how are we supposed to handle these events. So I just wanted to make that note, is that at the end of this, with everyone sort of being on their best behavior and trying to be really conservative, you still had drivers coming away from Saturday feeling like it was very sketchy.
Well, as I mentioned, qualifying was also damp. We had inters in Q1, and the field eventually shook out. Also a pretty interesting session. Like this, Charles Leclerc on pole position. Max Verstappen qualified in first, but dropped back 5 places for changing his gearbox. Sergio Perez in second, Lewis Hamilton third, Carlos Sainz fourth, Oscar Piastri in fifth, and then Verstappen. The real drama, though, was in Q2 when Verstappen just squeaked by in 10th place. He said over the radio, "I should have just pushed 2 laps in a row, like I said," to which his engineer replied, "And then when the track was 2 seconds quicker for your final lap and you didn't have any energy left, how would that have gone down?" Verstappen did apologize later, but this little spat continued during the race, which was very entertaining. But lining up in 7th place, Lando Norris, followed by George Russell, Fernando Alonso, and Lance Stroll in 10th. Then Yuki Tsunoda in 11th, Pierre Gasly 12th, Valtteri Bottas 13th, Esteban Ocon in 14th. He hit the wall in Q2 and did not go on. Alex Albon in 15th, and behind him, Magnussen, Zhou, Sargent, Ricciardo, who had a great lap in Q1 to get him out, but had his time deleted for track limits.
Yeah, such a killer.
Pretty
right at the end.
Brazenly cut the top of Radeon, I think it is. And then Nico Hulkenberg in 20th.
Verstappen all happy at the end with Jean-Pierre Lambiase, or GP as he's known. There was a great little... That back and forth was quite funny, and then he apologized at the end of Q3. It was quite cool.
Yeah. Do you want to take us through the start of the race, Danny?
Absolutely, I do. Can you tell me who the lead Alpine was? Was it Gasly or Ocon? I think it was Gasly.
The lead Alpine was Gasly. Yes.
Gasly, yeah, okay. So off they went, lights out, all that jazz. The main action on the first turn happens when Carlos Sainz has a very brief lockup behind Hamilton and is diving down the inside of turn one. Diving down the inside of turn one makes it sound a little bit more dramatic what it was. There was a gap to the inside of Hamilton, and Sainz was going for it. Oscar Piastri, unfortunately, was also going for sort of an ever-closing gap to the right of Carlos Sainz, and attempts to do an optimistic overtake, perhaps, in a part of the track that Carlos Sainz said after his race ended. is one that historically has not been a place where people can really overtake. It tends to just result in crashes. He ends up tagging the inside of Carlos Sainz. His front left hits the side of Sainz's car. This ends up having a bit of a concertina effect to all the crowd behind them as Piastri slows down, and so does Sainz, but slows down pretty bad. Ends up catching Gasly in a little traffic jam. Ocon, who qualified like 3 places below him, ended up overtaking him as well. Did most of the field, especially the folks on the right side. The two of them ended up not making it around. Piastri was out, I think, almost immediately. And then the main overtake that happened was actually Checo Perez at the back of the Kemmel Straight. He managed to fairly quickly overtake Charles Leclerc for first position.
Yeah, Sainz holds on for a while, but with that big hole in his side pod, gets past a bunch, so he does eventually retire. I felt bad for Piastri because it, to me, not a racing driver, but it looked like the move was pretty safe right up until it was not.
Yeah.
He looked like he braked pretty early, but it's just that Sainz moved in because he had to, right, to make the corner. So
and that turn.
It
I don't know
didn't
if
feel
you
like
watched
Piastri
any
was...
of the.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, it didn't feel like Piastri was trying to do the whole like lap one, gonna sneak it up the inside and get it. He was occupying fair space on the track and was the only space available to him. He was leaving room when he was outside. It's just that it felt like Sainz was forced to take evasive action to prevent running into the back of Hamilton. Was it Hamilton that was right in front of him?
It was, yeah. Hamilton was in third,
and so, he has that lockup and just goes, like, skittering into the middle part of the track. But at that point, like, he becomes the wedge that is closing on Piastri. So, yeah, for me, it didn't look like it didn't look like Piastri was trying to do anything untoward. He was just kind of stuck in a position that was only a little awkward, but became untenable the minute Sainz came into the middle.
Yeah, I think it was one of those ones that, like... it's kind of a too wide corner, like due to the nature of the way out of that corner. Like basically the acceleration out of that turn is so important because you're carrying that the entire way down to the Kemmel Straight, and people don't tend to have those, like, it's not like the first turn in Hungary, right, where you can all go kind of take all these different angles and then you're not really punished for it because on that little straight run down to the next turn, this is one where really there's only 2 lines that people are going to take. And it was one of those things. Sainz had made a good point after the race, which I think I'm getting a lot of this from, where he was saying, like, anyone who's driven here kind of knows that the accidents that happen on turn 1 happen when people try and dive up the inside of that turn. And it's because we can't, they can't see behind them. So they're hoping that someone isn't going to do the thing that's going to result in a crash, which is going up the inside of turn 1. So I think in his... it's just a shame though, and otherwise, like, Sauer's a fairly great weekend for Oscar Piastri. Like, great qualifying, got a second in the sprint. He's really like he was definitely number 2 at McLaren and has been, and Norris has been on a bit of a tear. So it was great to see him kind of get one this weekend.
Yeah. I mean, he shone pretty brightly in the sprint, so I'm looking forward to seeing more from him. Verstappen gets by Sainz pretty easily on the Kemmel Straight as well, into 4th place and ready to challenge Hamilton for 3rd. Again, that is in the opening lap from 6th place. Lap 5, the other McLaren of Norris also isn't doing so hot and had a pretty weird race. On lap 5, he was in 9th, having lost 2 places, or I think 3 with Piastri, and gets passed by Stroll with a, honestly, kind of a baller move, a dive bomb into that final chicane, and then by Russell into turn 1.
Yeah, both of them,
and
all 3 of them on mediums as well. So it's not a mismatch or anything like that, because there were a lot of people on softs, but all 3 of those were on mediums.
Yeah, and although Sainz is compromised, 2 drivers get by him that I think really shined in this race as well. Tsunoda and Albon.
Yeah.
Their finishing positions don't really tell the whole story because they were kind of passing people all over the place in a way that I feel like we haven't seen very often this season. So just wanted to highlight those guys. They do pop up here in my notes.
I think Tsunoda's early race ability actually is something that doesn't come up very often, but he has fairly consistently managed to, like, get a couple of places at the first couple of laps of these races. He's really good. He's a good, like, fighter in the mid pack. You know what I mean? And it just ultimately, much like Albon probably doesn't have a car that over the course of several 100 miles isn't going to do so well against the peers around them.
Lap 6, Norris comes in to swap from medium to hard tires to see if he can stop some of the bleeding. And at the same time, Verstappen gets by Hamilton into third place on, I believe it's the Kemmel Straight. Hamilton having kind of no options. Verstappen is just so fast on this race and is now chasing down his teammate. And by lap 9, he has already gotten into DRS range of the second place Leclerc, and with the help of DRS on the Kemmel Straight, easily passes him on the outside into the next corner. All that's left is Perez 2.5 seconds up the road. And it's shortly after that we get some more snipey radio from Verstappen and his engineer, GP, who says, "Don't forget to use your head, please." Verstappen says, "Are we both doing it or what? You just follow my instruction. Thank you." And Max Verstappen, "No, I want to know if both cars do it." I think he's probably talking about a tire strategy here. GP says, "Max, please follow my instruction and trust it. Thank you." Very snipey, very fun to listen to.
It's amazing.
GP then
how he talks to
a lap later.
It's like a school principal or something. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's amazing. Yeah, how he's able to do that.
Yeah, I feel like we only get the information that we get from the race about what these guys are like, right? And it's not representative of who they are because it's always a high stress situation. But like that, the whole dynamic there, it's very easy to read it as like Max is this hothead and GP is the only guy who,
right.
Isn't like a yes man around him or something, like he actually is he's the I think we've used the analogy in the past. He's the golden retriever that gets paired up with the leopard of Max Verstappen in captivity to keep him calm.
Yeah, it's but like you said, it's you never really know, and also like I feel like it's a very, I don't know what Dutch people are necessarily like, but like I do feel like having those types of caustic like back and forth but retaining a lot of like respect with people is a very European thing, you know what I mean? Like that's something I learned that I had to like calm down when I came to California, was to not be so outwardly aggressive about things, because that's just, I don't know, not to be overly generalist, but like that, I feel like that is much more common in Europe, and certainly in like sports. I imagine it definitely is, where people like effing blind at people, but they're totally fine 5 minutes after the whistle is blown.
The one thing I'll say, because the sniping kind of goes on through the race, so maybe we just talk about like there's a message later in the race that are like very pointed, but the one part of it was like Max seemed pretty normal over the radio, but the snippiness was coming from the pit wall. And after a certain point, it's like, I'm sorry, which of us is like recognized as sort of the best driver on the grid right now and is turning blistering laps in this? Like at a certain point, you just keep me apprised of the race. You just keep me apprised of like the state of the race, and let me do the thing I'm the best at right now. It was kind of like there's a little bit, some of the testing this felt odd to me given how impeccable Max's performance has been. If there were more mistakes you could point to, if there were more things you'd point to where like Max seemed to be jeopardizing things in a way that was like readily parsable, but that just didn't seem to be the case. So some of the tension seemed to be coming from a place I couldn't quite figure out.
It's always hard, isn't it? Because you never tell, like, are they not sharing some of the messages? Are we getting a different view on this? Because like we're only hearing certain, but no, that's a fair judgment.
And we don't know what goes on before in the briefing and in the post-race briefing.
Maybe Max stole his bagel. You know what I mean? Like maybe Max like spat on his coffee or something. Who knows?
Well, from here in the race, it's kind of a let's go now to the Kemmel Straight and see who's overtaking kind of a show. Ricciardo gets by Norris for 14th, Ocon by Magnussen for 12th. Albon and Tsunoda traded places a couple of times, which was fun to watch. First Albon on Tsunoda and then the other way around. Tsunoda ending up in 10th. On lap 17, the straight gives us the teammate battle we were expecting, such as it was, as Verstappen gets by Perez with DRS for the lead of the race, looking like he's in an entirely different car. On the same lap, Russell clears Stroll for 6th, having been stuck behind him for a while. And a few laps later, Gasly gets by Stroll for 7th. And yeah, there's some passing, I guess. People are trying some different tire strategies. Norris in particular, who, as I said, has kind of a weird race. He had gone onto those hard tires, intending to go a long way on them, but his pace was just nowhere. So the team brought him in for soft tires right around the time that it started to rain.
Yeah, which seemed like bad news. But the rain was such a weird little rain shower that never seemed to pick up. And then Norris ended up putting in like a mad stint on those softs.
Yeah, so the rain does cause Verstappen to almost lose it through Eau Rouge, which was just a real goosebumps kind of moment.
Squeaky bum.
Yeah, but yeah, Danny, nobody bites on the intermediate tire. But what the rain did do is succeed in slowing down practically everyone else who was out there with worn tires. Yeah. So Norris, with those new softs, ate up a lot of time on those cars that eventually did need to pit, getting by Sargent on lap 22 around the outside of that long downhill right-hander, which was quite a move.
I think he was on lap 22, he was 17th, and after a lot of that rain shuffle that happened, he had made his way up by lap 38, he was 7th. So,
oh yeah,
fantastic.
I should put I'm gonna make a note of this to put the race fans lap chart.
Oh, cool.
In the show notes, because it's just, you can see him. It's this bright orange streak that is the only one going in that direction, and it's just like a big cross through the entire field. It's awesome.
Very cool. Very good for McLaren as well. As I bet they weren't feeling too great about how the week ended up, but that was definitely a bit of a cherry on top, I guess.
Yeah, or at least some consolation prize for Piastri's
consolation frosting. Yeah,
there you go. Lap 23, Tsunoda gets by Gasly on the Kemmel Straight for 6th place before pitting, and around here is when we get that additional Verstappen radio. GP says, "This tire had reasonable deg in the first stint. I would ask you to use your head a bit more." Verstappen says, "I can also push and we can do another stop, a little bit of pit stop training." No, not this time. So I wonder also if use your head is code, right, for go long on these tires.
I don't know. I there was maybe because he does keep repeating it, but the one part,
"Shut the fuck up," was code for "we're going on wets."
There was one thing that I was kind of wondering about some of this, particularly the bit about maybe we can throw an extra pit stop in there and see what happens. Is this also a please? Can you just not humiliate Checo for one goddamn race? Yes, we know you can pull a safe pit stop gap on. That's
a good point,
on Sergio. We know you can do that. We really need you to not do that.
God, that is literally the first thing that has made sense in my head of why. Because it's not like they've ever been worried about him pushing in the past, and it's not like the track was in a particularly dangerous spot or that he's not a sure hand here. They've literally done the whole him pushing 30 seconds ahead and doing the fastest lap, and they obviously don't need the fastest laps anymore. They've almost won the championship already. So I think that's actually very astute. Although I think he still ended the race 22 seconds ahead of Perez. So
he did, but that's without doing the
not
pit
50.
stop. You know what I mean? That's
right. Yeah.
That's kind of the level of dunking where it's I pulled out a safe stop and just left you in the dust that way. Because it is Red Bull has one driver that's nothing else is needed. He's just cruising to this victory. And then the other driver is having a crisis of confidence, and they still want those points.
Yeah, well, they got him. But we'll get to the race result in a second. Lap 33, just a few more notes here. Gasly gets by Albon for 11th place with a great series of moves through multiple turns. Just really good driving by both of them. It was fun to watch. Lap 38, the other Alpine is coming alive too. Ocon getting by Tsunoda around the outside of the chicane at the end of the straight. Really tight squeeze there, but he manages to make it stick. But yes, Verstappen wins
And
the
Stroll.
Belgian
He did
Grand
Stroll
Prix.
as well, a couple of laps later as well, Ocon.
This is the 8th win in a row for Verstappen, equaling the record held by Alberto Ascari and Sebastian Vettel. Sergio Perez, his teammate, came home in second place, almost maximum points for Red Bull. Charles Leclerc in third, rounding out the podium. And then Lewis Hamilton, who pitted late to get the fastest lap, gets that extra point in fourth place. Behind him, we've got Fernando Alonso, the Aston Martin, Fernando saying that the Aston Martin felt a lot more back to normal this weekend. George Russell in sixth. Lando Norris hangs on with his soft tires for seventh after what was sure to be just languishing in the back of the field. Way to go, Lando. Esteban Ocon in eighth. Lance Stroll ninth. And Yuki Tsunoda also hangs on to the points-paying positions there. Yet another point for AlphaTauri. Pierre Gasly in 11th, followed by Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guanyu, Alex Albon, Kevin Magnussen in 15th, then Daniel Ricciardo, Logan Sargent, Nico Hulkenberg in 18th, and the DNFs of Carlos Sainz and Oscar Piastri.
Yeah.
And that was the very, very eventful Belgian Grand Prix. So many events.
Here's the thing, though, right? I feel like this is an argument that comes up every once in a while when we have one of these races, because these races happen every once in a while. There's a famous Chinese Grand Prix from maybe 10 years ago where there was like 80 overtakes or something crazy and nobody remembers it. And this weekend felt a little bit like that.
Because overtakes are not... everyone thinks that overtakes are the measure of how good a race was. And I'm sorry, that is not how it works.
Totally. We crave them when they don't happen. But when they come, they don't give us the nutrients that we need. And it's the weirdness of this year as well, where when you read out the Drivers' Championship... remember there was like Formula 1.5 and there was all these like versions, Reddit, subreddits where they would basically like imagine the championship as if Mercedes weren't there. Imagine the championship if the Red Bulls weren't there, and it is amazing. Obviously it wouldn't work the same because you'd be getting 25 points if they came third or whatever. But like we're in such a weird like little season where there's actually like a lot of really good racing happening, and but it's just nobody gives a shit because the Red Bulls are just running away with it, and it's just such a bummer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, also a bummer for one Alpine team boss, Rob. What is up? Who could have foreseen this, Rob?
No.
Who could have seen this coming?
Fucking Rob and his crystal ball could have.
It turns out that reminding your bosses that they promised you 100 races and you're only in like 30 of them is not actually a persuasive argument. So shortly after you recorded, heading into the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, Otmar Szafnauer was released as Alpine F1 team principal effective after the race. So he got a sort of Walking Dead race. He got sort of a one last race weekend to lead the team. He wasn't the only casualty. Their long time, like 30 years at the company, Alan Pemain was also released from Alpine as a part of this house cleaning. I think I had missed this as well. I knew that we had mentioned the fact that what was it, Luca Di Maio was sort of installed above Szafnauer, and that seemed like a bad sign for Szafnauer's longevity. The thing I missed is shortly after that move was made, he was installed between Rossi and Szafnauer. Well, that was resolved because Laurent Rossi was also moved to special projects away from the racing program.
Ooh, special project. Sounds like gardening leave.
Indeed, it does.
The archives of Williams.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, could you alphabetize these, please, Laurent?
So Rossi lost his job, and then Safnauer and Permain lost their jobs, and Alpine seems like a shambles, which meant sweet Schadenfreude for a lot of Alpine personnel and advisors. Alain Prost, who called out ages ago that he thought Laurent Rossi was a egomaniac and was destroying the team. Here are some of his words on hearing the news of what all has unfolded at Alpine this past week. Laurent Rossi is the best example of the Dunning-Kruger effect, that of an inept manager who thinks he can overcome his incompetence with his arrogance and his lack of humanity towards his people. He was Alpine's boss for 18 months and thought he understood everything from the outset, yet that couldn't be further from the truth. His management stopped the momentum the team had built since 2016, achieving those podiums and that win. Let's check in on our old friend Cyril.
Oh, great, yeah.
Oh, please.
So one thing he mentioned was he thought the 100 race plan that Safnauer was talking about, but that Alpine had like drawn up as their sketch. He was like, that plan sucks. He said that it's absurd to like call that a plan because F1 doesn't care if it's race 99. 100 does not mean you're due, and everyone else is making progress too in those 100 races. It's an absurd way to run a team. But then he also said, the previous management made a point of having complete reset after I left, which involved dismissing about 15 people. We underestimate this all the time in F1, as in other highly competitive sectors. It takes time to get someone from the competition. When you lose 15 people and you hire, it takes 2 or 3 years before it takes effect. The reshuffle that Laurent Rossi decided to make, we haven't even really seen its impact. This move... Man. The motorsports press are obviously just like teeing off on Alpine, but this is one of the central issues. You alluded to a moment ago, Danny. Gardening leave is a thing in F1. Like, even if they don't want your services anymore, if they have you under contract and you have like useful skills and knowledge in your head, they would prefer you have a nice long vacation rather than have you start work at a competitor team. So yeah, like Laurent Rossi, even if he was able to get the people he wanted, there's sort of a spin-up time to getting those people on board, and now they've reset yet again. So that is the team is in a disastrous place on the eve of a period where they need to develop a new car to the new spec. Interestingly enough, leadership at Alpine, Bruno Femin, mentioned that they didn't. So we knew that Laurent Rossi had made those really like scathing comments about how much the team was sucking and how much it needed to get its act together this year. And so Femin did clarify that it was actually not the team's performance or a feeling about like confidence in the team's leadership. He said it was a disagreement, but there was just a lack of shared vision among the stakeholders. He said, we never lost confidence. I think when we are developing these kinds of projects, we really need to be on the same line with all the team and the top management of the team. We were working together, but at one stage we realized that we were not on the same line on a couple topics. The competition, it's so hard. If we're not 100% aligned, I think we all have enough experience that it's useless to continue together, and everybody has to learn to go his own route. So something transpired. Perhaps mid-house cleaning. Like, was Safnauer not poised for the chopping block, and then something unfolded between him and the incoming management clique? I have no idea, but it is as bad as like things seemed over there. This does sort of seem like they've kind of blown up the team. Now, who can they replace him with? Well, I mean, one thing that's been noted is the team is in such obvious disarray, and it's such a revolving door in terms of who is the team principal, that a lot of your better candidates for a team principal might not be interested in the job. But there is one name just in the hopper right now that keeps coming up. Anyone want to guess?
I'm going to say Maurizio Arrivabene.
Drew?
Ron Dennis.
Wow, we're dusting off a classic.
No wrong answers. I like these. They're all great answers.
Okay, so remember...
Coach K.
Oh my God.
Brad Pitt.
So remember when Ferrari released Mattia Binotto, one of the things I mentioned is that there was a lot of like power unit knowledge that was walking out the door with him.
He was my number 2, but I wanted Arrivabene more.
I know. I want that classic. I want those classic features back. Damn it! But
he has to get out of Juve because of all the. He has to go.
Oh, didn't he already get punted or something?
He needs to go be involved in another scam somewhere else.
Yeah, but yeah. So, but Binotto has been floated as a great candidate because now suddenly his credentials look right for Alpine, which is that when he took over Ferrari, the squad was fractious. It had kind of a rough management situation.
Yeah.
And they were kind of lost in terms of technical development. And say what you will about how he ran the team once they were competitive, he got them competitive. And so he might have just the skill set that Alpine is crying out for here before the new engines in 2026.
There you go. How's his French? It's probably all right.
I think this is one of the things that's come up. I think he does speak it.
He does?
I think so.
Yeah, it's close enough to Italian. You know what I mean? A little bit trickier, but.
Well, speaking of getting back to fighting shape, Danny, what's James Vowles got to say?
Yeah,
Williams?
Rob's been great about checking in on this story with James Vowles. The long and short of this being the issues that they have, that he has sort of been very transparent about with regard to Williams's just bad foundation, that they have a lot of money that they need to spend, capital investment as it's known, to basically get them kind of caught up with a lot of their peers on the grid in terms of just how the organization and the way, silly things like their facilities and their software and stuff like that, which under the current cost cap regulations are sort of prohibitively expensive, because they will have to basically suck money away from other essential places to spend money. So they had a F1 commission at Spa on the Friday, and this was basically where they were going to talk about this capital investment proposal for allowing a sort of a slight injection of capital outside of the cost cap regulations to help some of these teams catch up. And it sounds like it's not gone very well. Vowles, quoted here in an article on Autosport, says, "If I wind back, the 20th of February, which is a few days after I started here, was the first day I put on the table that we Williams need help. We cannot compete at the front with the facilities we have at the factory. That remains the case today. That hasn't changed. And in 5 months or so, it's unfortunate and it's disappointing, frankly, that we're in the situation where, again, that meeting, I would argue, went round in circles, if nothing else." I was interested to see where the pushback was coming from. I was imagining it would be the teams around him, but it sounds like that actually isn't the case. Quoting Vowles again here, "It'll be no surprise that the back of the grid, near enough all unanimously had their hands up for most of these votes. The ones at the front and the grid did not. There were some exceptions to that." So obviously he's not blowing up anyone's particular spot, but it sounds like the fat cats at the top are kind of happy with the way it's all going.
This is a top Toto anime betrayal. This is the little protege is taking over the scrappy family F1 team and trying to catch up on
Toto.
Yeah, and just absolutely the little thumbs down there as he's just begging for just a little money, just a tiny bit of money for warehouse software.
He wiggled his hand, just like thumb to the side, and then it tilted up slightly, and then down. Unlucky.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hope they figure this out because, like, I don't know how they get out of this with the cost cap. Like, you have to keep building an F1 car, but you can't do things like, right, get database software or build a wind tunnel or, do any of these other, like, infrastructural things.
It's hard, right? It's difficult, right? Because, like, James Vaz could just be a really good salesman for this idea. Like, this could all be hogwash or a little bit closer to hogwash than maybe he's saying. Like, maybe the rest of the teams are going, hey, man, that's your bed. It's going to take you a few years. You're going to have to, like, eat shit for a couple of seasons once you spend all that money. But, then you'll be caught up and then you'll be in a better spot. I don't know if that's a fair way of looking at it. You would. I think the frustrating thing for a team in Williams's position here is that Williams have kept themselves in a sport that for the longest time was not making anyone any money for the love of the sport. And in a time where there is so much money getting pumped into these teams and they just can't spend it to be part of the game, I think that's like just... It's probably more frustrating than it is like detrimental to the future of the team. But I would prefer them to be able to catch up for sure. But who knows how much James Vows's analysis of this? It's obviously somewhat self-serving, and who knows how accurate it necessarily is.
Yeah, I mean, but it does strike me as enormously bad faith in a lot of ways. Because I mean, obviously, what the teams at the front are holding out for is, well, we can just increase the cost cap. That's what their position is.
Yeah,
well, what?
Yeah.
Everyone should everyone should get more money, which is the most like fat cat thing to do, right? Which is that actually it's not fair that the people who are behind would get a little bit extra to make it capital improvements that we already made when we knew the budget cap was coming in. That we were.
Have you seen Christian's his canteen bill right now? It's through the roof.
Yeah, so it's like it is pretty slimy that the like leading teams are basically trying to hold the teams that are not a competitive threat meaningfully underwater unless they too get to spend more money and further cement their advantages, which again was partly locked in because they had the capital before the budget cap came in to make their improvements. So it's we had a brief window, I feel like, of F1 team principal comedy around or comedy around COVID and trying to figure out like put the sport on a sustainable footing. It feels like that spirit has completely left the room and is rapidly waning.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll just have to see how if Valves can keep up the good fight and see if we can get somebody to budge here. Last news story here. This was reported in a few different places in a few different ways, and it was actually kind of confusing. So, like, they kept saying like, Formula One teams have come to F1 Academy. 10 drivers now are going to be, Formula One teams. It's to explain.
Yeah, you explain. Go ahead.
Yeah, F1 Academy is the women-only racing series that is the junior series for up-and-coming female racers that is trying to get more women into the F1 track. This year, 2023, is its inaugural season, and it's not televised on TV. They do YouTube recaps on the F1 YouTube channel, which are great to watch. Highly recommend that everyone check them out. But it feels very much like a like a proof of concept. Now it seems like they're enacting a little more of the game plan and getting buy-in from actual F1 teams. So what this actually means is currently it's a 15 driver grid, 5 teams with 3 cars each. And the teams are names you've heard of from like Formula 2 and Formula 3. The change for next year, and they're not quite clear on how this will work, but 10 of those competitors will now have to be nominated by a Formula One team, one per Formula One team. So, and they will race then with the same liveries as the Formula One teams because they are supported by those teams. So I think they're just trying to get, I think, not only more visibility toward, the lineage here of what they're trying to achieve, but also hopefully, like, this will mean that, there will be, that these drivers will have like an actual relationship with these teams, because it's very easy to say like, oh yeah, well, we have the women's series, and then like no one ever graduates to it, right? Or like the teams don't really pay attention. So yeah, we'll have to see how the details of this shake out, but I think it's a really positive development.
Yeah, I mean, from a visibility standpoint, it's a complete no-brainer because like there's one of the issue that we've sort of run into over the years covering the various women's only divisions of racing has been getting people to watch, and then the sort of like the circular evolution that you get from more people watching, more investment, more drivers coming in younger, more investment, blah 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 blah, as we see in all sports. That helping a lot. And I mean, if you look at, the World Cup is on, the Women's World Cup is on right now at the moment, and like that's a really good example of how you get people who maybe perhaps wouldn't have watched that previously, a sport like that with women previously. The World Cup is a really easy entry for people because the context of who everyone is, the stories, the countries is apparent. It's obviously, something that you can transpose directly from the Men's World Cup to the Women's World Cup. And the same is true of the expanded viewership of Premier League women's football. My team Arsenal has always, or has sort of over the past 10-15 years been on the forefront of that in terms of like visibility for the women's game on like the Arsenal TV and how they cover it in press releases and all that sort of stuff. And what we've seen over the past couple of years is those players interacting more with the main teams, sometimes playing in the main stadium a lot as well, and this is happening in lots of other Premier League clubs too. And it creates a very easy vector for people who are already fans of the club to watch that team too, because that's also one of the club's teams. So I think this is smart because if nothing else, it's going to give an easier ramp for people to watch that stuff because they will have pre-existing affiliations. And even if they don't have affiliations, they'll have pre-existing associations. And like that's the thing that's always the hardest when you go drop down and you watch Formula 2 or Formula 3 and you're looking at all these team names and all this, you don't know who anyone is and you don't know what the history is.
Prema, are they Ferrari? They're 100%.
Red. And it's the same with like, and that was a big point of Formula E when they started. It was letting you know who these teams were, what they represented, blah, 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 blah. So I think this is a great idea. And the ultimate version of this is that all the cars on the grid are the same as the Formula 1 cars. I think that maybe is what they're going for eventually, or maybe not. We'll have to see. But yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I just feel like it's, W Series kind of had a last mile problem. Like they produced I think Jamie Chadwick won all of the championships of that series from when it started to when it folded, and is in Indy next now. I actually I don't know how she's doing. I don't think great. Like there needs to be that linkage, right? And because now this is an official Formula One endeavor, they've got Susie Wolf as managing director here, wife of Toto Wolff, former Formula E team principal, and the last woman to drive at a Formula One race weekend. So hopefully, they keep reinforcing this pipeline, and we see some things from it in the next few years.
Jamie Chadwick, they're halfway through Index at the moment. She is 16 of 20. I would say 20. It looks like one of the other ones is a fill-in.
Okay.
So one of half the field are probably rookies. So not doing terribly, but not exactly lining up the field either.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for the news for this week. And as we head into the summer break, here's how the championship standings.
Imagine it without Red Bulls, just for a second, just imagine.
Well, I'll get them out of the way early. Max Verstappen is on top with 314 points. His teammate is behind him in second, Sergio Perez, with 189. Then we've got Fernando Alonso in third, and I think I heard David Croft say that Verstappen, Perez, Alonso has been the top three of the championship since the first race.
Oh, wow.
He has 149 points, but Lewis Hamilton in fourth, 148.
1 point.
Charles Leclerc is in fifth with 99 points, tied with George Russell. Then we've got Carlos Sainz in seventh with 92. Lando Norris has 69.
Ooh, nice.
Lance Stroll has 47 points in ninth place. Esteban Ocon's in 10th with 35. Behind him, Piastri with 34, getting some points this weekend. Pierre Gasly has 22. Alex Albon has 11. Nico Hulkenberg has 9. Valtteri Bottas in 15th place has 5 points. Then we've got Zhou Guanyu with 4. Yuki Tsunoda with 3. Kevin Magnussen with 2. And then Logan Sargent, Daniel Ricciardo, and Nick DeVries with 0. In the constructor standings, Red Bull Racing is on top with 503 points.
Ooh.
Mercedes is in second with 247. Aston Martin still in third with 196 points. Ferrari creeping up with 191. McLaren is in fifth with 103. They still have one more big upgrade, I think, to come, so we have not seen the last of them yet. Alpine is in sixth with 57 points. Williams and Gene Haas team tied with 11 points each at seventh and eighth place. Alfa Romeo is in ninth with 9 points, and Alpha Tauri has 3. If you would like to join the standings yourself, you can join our fantasy league using the link in the show notes. Maybe the summer break is a good time to get in if you are not already. The top 3 from the Belgian Grand Prix look like this. In third place, ATSC 3. In second place, Jordan GP 3. And in first place, Danny's Vegas Vacation. You gonna go, Danny? You gonna
No, those
brave
tickets
the
are still
cold
expensive.
at
They keep
midnight
texting
to watch
me.
a race?
No,
Yeah.
they keep texting me. But it's just not. It's not happening. That's Danny Ricciardo. Although Danny Ricciardo can't have a vacation there now because he got a race.
That's right. He can't even do his call-in show with Will Arnett.
Oh
anymore.
yeah, God, who are they going to fill in for that? Is it going to be? Nick
Nick
DeVries?
DeVries. I also apparently they did the
kids thing.
the F1 broadcast for kids. Yeah,
They did.
which I was unable to watch because apparently it's only for people that live in the UK or Germany.
Yeah, I saw a bit of it. I saw some of the like meme bits. There was one really good. It was Silverstone, wasn't it? It was. I think they did it.
Yeah.
And there was one great little interview that this they have. I don't know, some pit reporter, this little girl, and she was absolutely killing it. She was asking. Oh, she was asking Max about Orlando about breaking Max's trophy. That's what it was. That went viral. She was brilliant. She was like holding his feet to the fire on it. It was really good. Yeah, I wish I caught more of that.
I did see a picture of a child interviewer interviewing Yuki Tsunoda, and Yuki was shorter than him.
Oh no, really? Don't, come on, everyone. Come on. Respect the drivers, for goodness sake. These children these days are just too tall.
But overall in our fantasy league, top 3 are in third place, Lotus Begin, gentlemen.
That's good.
In second place, Paying the Stroll Toll. And in first, with 3,766 points,
Wow.
beat that Max Verstappen, we have Sins of a Catering Empire.
Oh, that's really good. That's really good.
That's very good.
That's very good. That's very you gotta have deep hands in both the F1 and video game pie, I feel like, to get that one, but it's good. It's good. Strong.
Yeah. You can also send us an email, shiftf1podcast@gmail.com or f1.cool/emails. You can also hit us up on the socials using the links in the show notes. That's us around the internet. Should we take it around the world of racing, Danny?
Let's race around the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you really projecting because you're in your studio and
Exactly.
not
I can
your
do it
home.
here. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, what happens is whenever I do the nyum, because I record now across from my daughter's bedroom at night, then she starts like saying, Dad, Daddy, Daddy, because she knows when I do the nyum, the show is over. So it's become like a
Wow.
calling card. Yeah.
Wow. Well, kicking things off here, racing this weekend on Thursday, the World Rally, Secto Rally Finland starts at Jyväskylä.
That's probably what it is.
Finland. Yeah. Nailed it. MotoGP is at the Silverstone circuit. Maybe you've heard of it. They also have the DTM, Danny.
Oh, finally. It's been so long. I've barely been able to handle it.
Yeah, the back is the Nürburgring is so long.
I like to Nordschleife right in there.
The NASCAR Xfinity Series is at the Michigan International Speedway in Brooklyn, Michigan for the Cabo Wabo 250.
What the fuck? What is Cabo Wabo? Does anyone know?
It is. What actually is it? I think it's
a nightclub.
Is it David Lee Roth or is it Sammy Hagar?
Sammy Hagar.
I think it's Sammy Hagar's.
Oh,
Is it a
no.
restaurant?
It says it's
that
a
is
nightclub
inspired
restaurant.
by Cabo San Lucas.
Okay, very good. So it's just
Yeah,
it's just Margaritaville for
it's
Hagar fans.
for Van Hagar folks. The IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship is at Road America this weekend. IndyCar is in Nashville, Tennessee for the Music City Grand Prix. That's the weird one that goes over the bridge,
Oh, it does.
right?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's like we used to have one of
the
those.
World
in
Rally.
F1. The
Valencia.
Valencia Grand Prix. Yeah.
Baby
Don't have
bridge
that
though.
anymore.
This is more of a bridge.
Little baby bridge. Yeah, great bridge.
There's one
Loved
in
it.
Suzuka.
Little overpass. Yeah.
The World Rally
Yeah.
Cross Championship is at Jules Tacony Circuit in Belgium for the World Rally Cross of Benelux.
Oh, I love Benelux. Belgium,
Yeah.
Luxembourg,
region.
Netherlands, together at last.
Mm-hmm. We've got Super GT at the Fuji Speedway, everyone, which is standing in the foothills of Mount Fuji in Oyama, Sunto District, Shizuoka Prefecture.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And we got NASCAR.
Back to Detroit. Let's go to Cabo Wabos or whatever it's called.
Close we
Not
are.
Detroit,
racing.
sorry, Brooklyn.
Yep, Brooklyn, Michigan for the Firekeepers Casino.
Oh,
400.
terrific. Lunch at Cabo Wabo and then the Firekeepers for dinner. You don't get more American than that.
Well, and that's us around the world, Danny. That's what's happening this weekend. But
That's
what
it.
is happening in the past?
In what is happening in the past? Let's find out together, shall we?
Listen,
I've read this one ahead of time.
It's late here.
It is. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fair enough. You're both on East Coast time as well at the moment, which is
Yeah.
fair play.
I'm right near the tricky triangle. I am in the
you're in
Pocono Mountains.
the Pocono Mountains. Beautiful. Is that East Coast? That's East time.
Yeah,
Is it?
it's Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Love it. Good old PA.
East of the Mississippi.
Say hi to the triangle for me.
Will do.
This day in the past, August 2nd, we have some beautiful history.
I hope you
to review.
proofread this one.
I absolutely did. Last week's haunted me until the end of racing on Sunday. Since the start of the World Championship in 1950, the German Grand Prix has always been at the Nürburgring or at Hockenheim, with one exception. Today, in 1959, the race was held at the curious Avus circuit in Berlin. The track is really just two long stretches of motorway with a hairpin at each end and is now part of a public road. The race is split into two heats amid concerns that the tyres would not last. British driver Tony Brooks won for Ferrari, with Americans Dan Gurney and Phil Hill making it an all-Ferrari podium. How about that? 3 Ferraris.
Wow.
Good on a motorway. The Autobahn in the middle of Berlin. The 1970 German Grand Prix held on this day was switched to Hockenheim at the last minute after the drivers refused to race at the Nürburgring until safety was improved. Austrian Jochen Rindt won to take him 20 points clear in the championship, but it was his last ever win as he was killed later in the season at the Italian Grand Prix to become F1's only posthumous world champion. So the answer is I proofread the first paragraph, but not the second.
We knew about Jochen. It's a familiar story.
That's true.
Like,
Yeah.
That's true. We knew.
like I did not know about just the nightmarish fate of the Ascari family. Like,
Right?
that didn't,
Yeah, that was
did not realize that they were under a motorsports curse. That was very sad to hear about. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely mad. Before we go for the break, because we're having a little break ourselves, aren't we, gentlemen?
We are.
Here on Shift F1. I want to remind people of the races that are coming up here with the rest of the season. We have had 12 of the 22 races. China was obviously cancelled, so we're one down. And when we get back, we have a couple of double headers and a triple header in there as well. So the 13th race will be back on the 27th of August for Zandvoort in the Netherlands. Quickly, a week after that, we will be in Monza. Then there is a week break. After that, we have another double header. We have Singapore on the 17th of September, followed by Suzuka on the 24th. We have another break. And then we have Qatar on its own at Losail. Break following that again. I think the Chinese Grand Prix was meant to be there. Then we have a triple header of the United States Grand Prix in Coda, Mexico City Grand Prix, of course, at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, and Interlagos in Sao Paulo after that. And then we have another break, and then the last two together, Las Vegas on the 18th of November and Abu Dhabi on the 26th. So some interesting tracks, a new track in there, lots of family favorites in there as well. Qatar and Japan for sure, Singapore as well. Have we not been to Singapore since? Were we in Singapore last year? Did that happen again? I can't remember. Singapore was one of those COVID ones that didn't come back for a little while. I'm trying to remember. Did we have it last year?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. Sorry, it's late.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go. That's the.
We did have it last
the
year.
run of it. We did. I just
Hey,
clearly
Perez
it
won.
wasn't very memorable. Wow. There you go.
Checo, greatness is calling.
All right. Well, final thoughts, Danny, ahead of our break here. We'll be off for, I think, two weeks, and then we'll be back with the pre-race for the Netherlands. Or were those your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if you're super bored and you want to listen to some podcasts, consider jumping on our Patreon, even if just for the month, and you can, there's dozens of podcasts on there.
Well, we will have our episode about Gran Turismo once
course.
it comes out. I think
We might need
August
to postpone
11th?
that because it keeps getting postponed by Oppenheimer.
Oh my God.
So it's now end of
Okay.
August. So I actually think we
Wow.
need a different movie for this month.
We
And
do Barbie. There's a car in Barbie.
there is.
Barbie.
Barbie.
Are there other video game car movies?
There's no Project Gotham Racing. There is a documentary about Gran Turismo drivers, which I think is somewhat what the Gran Turismo movie is based on.
Oh,
too.
is there like a Jan Mardenborough documentary?
I think there might. I don't know if it's a one thing or a series or something.
Okay.
But I won't be surprised. Is there no like what's a classic like Ridge Racer? There should be a Ridge Racer movie. That'd be cool. I'd watch that. Ridge Racer.
Mario Kart.
Good time. Mario Kart movie.
Let's watch Duel. I keep putting Duel
You're right.
on the vote, the Patreon vote, and it keeps coming in like second or third.
We should watch that. That
Just
is a
wanna watch
Steven
Duel.
Spielberg movie, I believe.
His first.
His first movie. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big truck. I only know about that because when Arcane were making LMNO, they put the Dual truck in the video because they thought
it's
Steven
pretty cool.
Spielberg would like it because they were showing it to Steven Spielberg. There you go. Yeah,
Nice.
maybe we'll do Duel. But yeah, final thoughts. Just like it's a funny old season. I'm enjoying a lot of the races. There's a lot of competitiveness, but I'm also I'm sort of like a blind optimist on most things, so I totally get it if people are feeling a little bit of a drag with this one. Yeah, we're in a weird spot with F1 at the moment. It's never been more popular, and we are in a bit of a competition funk at the top, and something's got to give.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I mean, the way that I look at it is the more that you learn about it, the more you can see during a race and find enjoyment in it. So even though, it's not maybe what we want, at least there are things to glean from it. But yeah, final thoughts, Rob, heading into the break.
I'm kind of dismayed to learn that apparently there's only the Inuit, effectively. Eskimo are not a thing.
Oh, really?
It's a completely it's a term that there's actually a great deal of mystery as to like how did this even happen? Because you can't really get there via any of the words that like the Inuit or the Yupik people like use to refer to themselves. So the entire like Eskimo words for snow thing isn't really a thing because the Eskimo itself is a corrupted word for the people who live there, who are the Inuit and the Yupik. However, oddly enough, it does appear that in some dialects, at least, they got a lot of words for snow and ice.
There you go. Wow. What a twist at the end of this podcast. I bet you didn't see that coming, listener.
If you would like to support the show and get access to all of our bonus episodes and the official Shift F1 Discord, you can do so over at patreon.com/ShiftF1. Have a good race weekend, everyone. We will see you all next time.